Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have a very special guest back on the show today. I have Tamieka Smith. Tamieka, it's great to have you on the show.
Thanks so much for having me on the show again, Gresham.
Yeah, absolutely. You're doing so many phenomenal things. I know you have a phenomenal story. So, super excited to get more into that, see all the awesome things you've been working on. But of course, before we do that, I want to read a little bit more about Tamieka so you can hear about some of those awesome things that she's working on. And Tamieka is the creative director and founder of Wordsmith Enterprises, who empowers dreamers to become doers of the world while unapologetically allowing their light to shine in a dark world. As a four-time author, certified goal success life coach, transformational speaker, blogger, podcaster, self-publishing consultant, and acquisition professional, she is a servant leader at heart. Compelled to do more than survive, Tamieka began her process of thriving after leaving an abusive relationship in 2010 with her children, one in pull-ups and one in diapers at the time. It's not how you start, but it's how you finish. And as an English major, I've always marveled at how powerful words and writing, and I absolutely love that. I think that is part of what Tamieka is all about. So I love that, first of all, she embodies it in the books that she helps and writes about, but also in helping other people to kind of see and kind of reclaim that power. Very inspirational change agent, testimony of the power of how telling your story not only kind of, I think, frees you, but it also, I think, frees other people because it gives them permission to be themselves. And as I mentioned, she was a former guest on episode number 205 of our podcast. So Tamieka, excited again to have you on the show. Are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
I am so ready, and it's always a pleasure. Thanks again.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get it started then. So to kind of kick everything off, I know I touched a little bit upon your story and how powerful it is. Could you take us through a little bit more on that story, what you've been working on and how you've been making that impact and dent in the world?
Yeah, and so back in 2010, I was in an abusive relationship for nearly 5 years, and as a little girl, always writing journals. And I remember reading Maya Angelou's "I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings," and thinking, "Wow, this story is so gripping, it's so compelling, and I want to do this one day." And years later, I manifested something there, with everything that went on, unfortunately, but fortunate to be able to tell my story. And when I would tell my story, when I did leave the situation, I could just see the reactions in people's eyes, and they were just like in disbelief, like, "Oh my goodness, you have to, for one, you have to believe in something higher than yourself, and for two, you have a story on your hands." And so, I took that into inventory, like, hey, I know I want to tell my story. I just didn't know how to do it. And so when I left back in 2010, and it took about 4 years later to really be serious about it, and, had to do the work, the internal work, and just making sure that we were okay in a safe space, and had to really build ourselves from the foundation back up to, having a sustainable income, to having some stability when it came to housing as well. So it took 2016. Not only wrote one book and released it in 1 month, it was two books in the same month, which is unheard of.
Wow.
And so one was the first book, Shattering the Glass House. That was a memoir of me telling my story, and also giving exit strategies on how to give out, to bring some humanity into abuse. And even though, here it is 2023, possibly 2024, when we, release this, but just letting people know, hey, it happens. It can happen to anybody. And doing advocacy work, and uh, years later getting degrees in human resources. So really pivoted, since we have talked, to not only help people tell their stories, but like you said, as a English major, the power of storytelling, it helps you get a job. It helps with marketing. It helps with so many other things besides writing a book. So just helping people in their personal and professional development with
Yeah.
Wordsmith Enterprises. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you obviously sharing that. Obviously, sorry, that you went through that experience. But
Mhm.
I think, as you said so well, or even I think Steve Jobs has this quote where he did this Stanford commencement speech, and he said that a lot of times you can't tell like why things are happening in your life until you look backwards and you start to see how you can connect the dots. And you reading that story, and like you said, the power of the manifestation of putting that out there, who probably would have known at that time that that story would sounds like it was really a foundational point in you being able to kind of
Mhm.
do that within yourself, but also do it for so many other people.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it was like almost like the floodgates when I would go live on social media or be on TV or on podcasts. When I would tell my story, it gave them power as well. It empowered them, and I would never forget. One of my grandmother's friends wrote my book, and I didn't know, that she was in an abusive relationship, and it gave her the courage to finally get out of that situation. So when you say that you just never know that the power that it can give somebody else, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, absolutely. And empowered to know that there is probably something on the other side, and that the other side doesn't have
Mhm.
to be what you're experiencing at that time. It's so
Absolutely.
powerful. And I know I was reading a little bit. I think especially like
Mhm.
during the pandemic as well too. That was a I guess I don't want to. I don't know if I'm saying it or giving it just by saying it was a huge issue. But I saw that you had written, a lot about that, about like how people can, kind of see maybe light at the end of the tunnel, or get out of those situations so that they can be in, better situations.
Yeah, absolutely. And it definitely, with everything going on during the pandemic in those 3 years, it took a lot of self reflection, and people had a lot of time to be with people that they normally don't be with, especially in those intimate partner relationships. And unfortunately, I have witnessed people, getting abused. It intensified, unfortunately. Life stress is not, giving an excuse it whatsoever. It's just one of those things that has happened. And a lot of people, whether it be male or female, they just decided to get up and go and took a risk worth taking. Yeah.
Yeah, and risk that definitely, is needed. So that's why again it's so powerful. Like I always love to hear obviously, what people do, but I think when you hear the why, hear what fuels
Mhm.
them, and how that, is such a powerful opportunity for people to be able to kind of reclaim their voice. But also, as you said, you can use that voice in so many different ways when it comes to like the
Mhm.
written word and being able to communicate. So I love that it sounds like built that foundation for everything you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. With speaking with potential prospects, doing my 9 to 5, and helping them connect with jobs. And, it's about impact, especially working in healthcare. And so, when you say you're changing lives, not only through, helping someone find a job, it's just even with Wordsmith Enterprises, helping people through the power of words, because it was one minister that said God created words, the world through words. And when you read Genesis, he absolutely did. He said, "Let there be light." And we have to remind ourselves, regardless of whatever background of religion that you choose, that we are light of the world, and we have to be a light. We have to be a shining example in everything that we do, and especially everything that we say.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes there's not enough awareness, but I love that you talked to, about Genesis, and how, the words were said, and it became so. And sometimes
Mhm.
don't realize that we also have some type of power as well too in the things that we say and things that we don't say. So it's so important to kind of
Right.
wield that weapon, I guess you can say, in the right way so that you can
Absolutely.
be that light, and you can,
Mhm.
speak life into people and do all of those things which the words can have so much power in terms of doing. So I wanted to drill down a little bit more. I know we talked a little bit upon like how you serve and work with your clients. Could you take us through a little bit more what that looks like and how you're making your impact in the many ways there?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to Wordsmith Enterprises, I like to do an inventory, like just an assessment, almost like an interview, but not with that pressure of, an interview, just a
Mhm.
casual conversation, just to see what it is that I can serve to the best of my ability. And when it comes to whether it's telling a story, being confident, even when it comes to like life coaching, just helping them to know that they can do it, because so many of us are just running this race of life and not having the community, because we run best in community, to help push them along the way. So whether it's giving them the confidence to self-publish, or just doing some life coaching strategies to help them obtain, not only obtain, but supersede their goals. That's what Wordsmith Enterprises is all about.
Nice. I love that, and I was almost wondering, and this might even be part of the your secret sauce and what sets you apart and makes you unique. I almost wonder if, especially that life, because I often say we forget about the human aspect of business, but I almost feel like you having that experience and being a life coach, I feel like that
Mhm.
it makes it more of a like, let's just have a conversation, because I
Yeah.
think you can easily say like, hey, I want to be able to kind of have a speaking engagement, or I want to be able to write a book. But I think if you don't really drill down deep and understand that confidence issue, like there could be like gaps or things that don't happen as a result of you having that goal and that ambition.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And a lot of us, especially when we are selling and pitching, we have to learn that it's okay to hear no. You're going to hear no before you hear yes. And one of the things that I did, since we last spoke, I took on a sales job
Nice.
before I went into HR. And it helped me not only have that confidence to pitch, but to also be okay with hearing no. Because when you are in sales, and a lot of people say, oh, sales this, sales that, but it's a really great tool to help you have the confidence to pour out and get some feedback. So that really helped as well.
Yeah, it ends up being so powerful, because I think that and it's really changed me, because I think when I first graduated, my first job was in sales, and I think I had
Mhm.
a perception that the people that were quote unquote successful, they're people that pitched their products, or they tried to make a sale or do whatever it is. They called one person, and they made all their business. They were success over that. But it's really the people that had the confidence, the I guess the resolve, the resilience to
Mhm.
continue to ask those questions. That's what's really kind of set people apart. And it kind of just changed my mind. It sounds like you probably had that same experience where you start to realize that it's okay to hear no. And that only gives you like opportunities to kind of improve and get better.
Yeah, to really hone in on your skills, to really know what it is that you're talking about when it comes to what you're selling. So many of us, especially in the generation that we're in, they're so used to running towards a bag, but we have to get back to our why. Just like
Mhm.
my mentor, Joseph Foster, told us in class, we got to get back to our why. Yeah, it's great to have money and all those things that will come from you selling and getting clients and all those things, but you have to get back to the foundation, to the basics of what you're doing and the why.
Yeah, it ends up being, so powerful, because I think in trying to secure or get the bag, you can lose sight over like I think who we are, but also even why we're doing it. Sometimes when we quote unquote even get the bag or get whatever it is that we're going after, you have that, I guess, empty feeling, because you
Mhm.
haven't really tapped into that why. You haven't really had that conversation, answered those questions, and you're just kind of going on the treadmill, for lack of a better term, towards something, but it's not really that thing that I guess kind of fills you up, and can kind of ride you through those great times, but also those not so great times.
Yeah, and just also we meet people and we see people all the time. They're, having their lives taken early on because of them not being happy, them feeling empty with all the money, with all the access, with all the things. And it's unfortunate that it happens, and it's just good to be grounded and have people around you that will ground you. I have two kids, and they're two teens, and they will humble me all the time. And it's a great experience, and it's just good to have, like some people like to say, day ones or even day two, somebody that's just going to keep you grounded for what
Yeah.
you're doing and why you're doing it.
Absolutely. I think anytime you can have date anything, those are really great people to definitely have around, no matter where they come along, upon that journey. So I
Yeah.
absolutely love that, especially hearing, how powerful and foundational, that confidence piece is, and how that pours
Mhm.
into all the things that you do, because I think it's, you can stop yourself before you get started if you don't have that confidence. And sometimes that confidence is not necessarily what you have. Sometimes it's who you
Mhm.
surround yourselves with and that environment that you have, because those will sometimes be the people that root you on and kind of tell you to shoot for the stars, even sometimes when you don't feel like you can yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, especially on those days where you just do not feel like anything. Even this light behind me, it says celebrate, and even getting out of bed can be a celebration for some people,
Mhm.
because people are dealing with internal battles every day. So when it comes to celebrating, I always tell people make sure you celebrate those small wins. Because so many people think about those big accomplishments and they lose sight of going back to the foundations, your why, your what, and celebrating yourself along the way. Because when you have those bad days where it's just like, I don't want to go to work, I don't want to get out of bed, I don't feel like doing this podcast, you got to think about what and why you're doing this.
Yeah, that's why I love, the work that you do, because I feel like
Mhm.
when you're in that space where you feel like, you're frustrated, you feel like things aren't going the way that you want them to go, and you're in sometimes a deep, dark place, you can forget to celebrate the whys. You can forget to look at those things. And obviously every situation is different, and
Right.
it depends on what that is. But I think we can sometimes forget to celebrate anything, and celebrate the quote unquote small things end up being big things. So I love
Right.
that you, of course, do that for people, and
Yeah.
kind of give them the power to be able to do that themselves as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely important not to lose sight on those big goals and those in between that's going to get you there. So, something else I always tell people, whatever it is that you're doing, just make sure you document it, so you can see your journey. Because so many people look at the accomplishments, but don't look at what took them there. That's why I always like to look. And one little fun fact about me, I like looking at documentaries
Mm,
and just seeing, what motivates people. This past weekend, I was looking at one of the L'Oreal, the founders of L'Oreal. She was a hair of L'Oreal, and just looking at some of the things that she was facing during her
yeah.
period. So yeah, like I like looking at the biographies of people. You learn a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of times get they call, I call it like the inside baseball, the behind the scenes of what led them to success. You see them on the top of the mountain or wherever they've achieved, but you don't see like uh, the valleys, and there's usually more valleys than there are peaks of what it took to kind of get there. So I think I love that,
Right.
and that's why I love the work that you do as well, because I think it starts to, again, give light to the actual story, the actual journey, those things that are happening that you don't see, and often we don't see on social media, or it's talked about enough. So truly appreciate you, obviously, for doing that, and of course, empowering people to do that as well. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and I want to
Mhm.
ask you for what I call a CEO hack. So this could be like an app, a book, or a habit that you have, but what's something that makes you more effective and efficient?
Good question. So something that makes me more effective and efficient is just writing the good old to do list. I know we're in a world of apps, and there's an app for literally everything known to man, but just getting a good old piece of paper, sticky notes, reminders, because my attention span can be all over the place at times being a creative. So just something to hone me in, and also having an accountability partner. Hey, did you do what you say you was going to do earlier today? If not, why you didn't do it? So just making sure that I'm not above reproach, and that as I'm helping people, somebody is helping me along the way as well.
Yeah, that's extremely powerful, and I think in a way where everything's running towards or sprinting towards digital, and everything's so
Mhm.
connected. I feel like that's when sometimes when you're able to break through the noise, everything's online. So sometimes the way to kind of stay focused is to get offline and have that to-do list and things that that you're holding yourself accountable, that you need to do in order to push that needle forward. Do you have like a time period or a way that you kind of set up your to-do list? Is there like a certain time that you set it up, or do you feel like you just kind of have it flowing throughout the day?
I like to do time blocks from this time to this time, I'm going to do this, especially, with multitasking, being a mom of two teens, work, doing, my business side too. So those time blocks, it really helps me. Um, Even with listening to audiobooks, even though I'm a person that, loves to touch pages, those audiobooks and listening to YouTube and all those things, it also helps motivate me as I go along my day.
Yeah, I love that and how powerful kind of time blocking it can be. And especially, I think they said if you want something done, give it to a busy person because usually they're a lot more disciplined with their time. They realize I have from this time to this time. So we're going to get as much done as we can and I'm going to lock in and be focused on it. And I think that when you're able to do that, it allows you to maximize your time and do so much more by having that to do this and knowing I'm going to crank out one, two, and three right here within this hour and a half, whatever it is, and however you time block that.
Yeah, and also, me working from home started back in 2010, doing it off and on since then, before, it got into a phenomenon during COVID, just learning that self-discipline early along, that really helped. Absolutely.
Yeah, I would definitely say that's huge, and just it's so easy to go from thing to thing to thing. I think especially during COVID, what happened,
Mhm.
was their lives blended. Where you were literally eating dinner, eating breakfast, where the same place you were working, and you were helping your kids out with their homework. All those things were happening in the same place, so it made it really hard
Right.
to kind of have that discipline, that focus, or that environment in certain sections of the household.
Yeah, it was some intense times, I'm sure, for everybody. But I know that I do not have the grace to be a teacher. So my kudos. I have a sister, I have a couple of sisters that are educators. So I commend them so much because it taught me that, it takes a lot of patience to do that kind of work, and they don't get paid enough, that's for sure.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that, and it definitely takes a village as well too, which is why we definitely
Mhm.
celebrate and appreciate those teachers and anybody else that helped out during those times. So, what would you consider to be what I call a CEO nugget? A little bit more word of wisdom or piece of advice. You might have already touched on this, but it might be something you would tell somebody if they're starting as an author or getting started with their business, or if you were to hop into a time machine, you might tell your younger business self.
It's a great question. So I would say give yourself grace. Um, a lot of people wait to do things when it's the perfect time, the perfect situation, the perfect environment, but allow yourself to make mistakes. That's how you learn your way. You can edit it as you go, remix it as you go. I remember, even with my first book, trying to save money and edited the book myself, which I would never do again. But it was funny because my youngest was reading the book a couple days ago. He was like, "Did you edit this yourself?" I said, "Yeah, I did." I'm like, yeah, I see the mistakes, but we got that fixed since then. But like even then, but the message still came across. The message still, went around the world, and I didn't lose sight of the goal that was in mind. It was to tell the story, to help other people, and even though there was mistakes, I allowed myself to have that grace to just keep going forward and make changes along the way.
I love that. And I think again, going back to, seeing people's journey and also things that they're doing, we always think it's perfection and we always think it was right on day one. In reality,
Mhm.
the journey is rarely ever perfect. And often people that are doing better and greater have done that because they've done it over and over. They've written four books. And it's not just been, the one book that they wrote. And I think
Right.
by going and continuing to kind of know and stay focused on the why rather than the how, it allows you to really kind of laser focus on that and to see that progress and to see that impact that you can ultimately have.
Yeah, and that's what it's about, impact. At the end of the day, how are you doing whatever it is that you're called to do, and allowing yourself to be human? Because a lot of us as entrepreneurs, a lot of people are looking for us for all the answers. And yes, we are problem solvers, but sometimes when we are in the middle of our journey, that we forget that, hey, that we're human too. and that we have to have safe spaces as well to vent if we're having a bad day, or some of us may be dealing with clients, and that's why I always do, the interviews, like I was saying earlier, because it may not be a good fit to whatever their mission is, because it got to be more than money. That's a byproduct, and it's a nice byproduct to have, but you have to know your why. So it's really foundational for me.
Absolutely. No, I love that. And, um, I love that you said doing what you were called to do, because I think if we don't
Mhm.
tap into that, then again, everything else can kind of, you know, fall by the wayside. We can lose focus. We can be doing the things that we're not really supposed to be doing, quote unquote. And I think
Mhm.
that when you're able to kind of tap into that, I think it's a phenomenal filter to be able to know what steps you're going to take when you're going to take them. So I love that that's, very foundational in the ways that you work, because I think, as you go through the journey and you start to, things don't always go the way you want them to go. But if you can kind of picture your flag, or hang your hat on your why, your purpose, like I was called to do this, then it's going to help
Mhm.
you to kind of, I guess, get through those times and continue to kind of move on.
Yeah, because it's so easily to get distracted. You see someone, let's say if they're in an MLM and they're making the money that you've been working hard, like, hey, what's going on here? What about me, God? And so when you focus and really hone in, like, hey, I'd rather take the scenic route, and whatever God has purposed me to do, He'll still get me to that place. Because you turn back around and look at that same person, they may be hopped on another MLM company. So, not to not what that next person is doing, it's just that we have to realize that we all have a unique route. And whatever that route is, that we just have to focus on what we're called to do at the end of the day. It may pivot, it may change along the way, but the ultimate goal is knowing that you're called to do something, because we all have a purpose on our life.
Absolutely. I would definitely echo that. I often say if you run your own race, you can't lose. And I think that in my race as well, as I feel like it's something that is called, we're called to do, and we're purpose driven.
Mhm.
Then you start to realize that this is your race, and we can get in trouble when we're looking at the other person and looking into the other lane and say, no, we need to do this because so and so is doing this or doing that. But in reality, we need to stay true to the gifts, the opportunities, the talents that we have, and run our race in the best way possible. It may not be a straight path. It probably won't be a straight path, but it is our path nevertheless. And if we lean into that,
Mhm.
then we can get to where we need to be.
Yeah, yeah, and be able to get a little bit extra when you are in those peaks and valleys, because those are going to be a testament to your own character and your own strength, that you didn't give up. And you're going to be glad on the other side of that, that you did not give up. Because when it comes to, especially with the healing journey of overcoming, domestic violence, we were homeless for a short period of time, and just overcoming those obstacles. It's just, it gives me a good perspective on those days where it can be challenging.
Absolutely. And I think even biblically it says, even count it as a blessing to have those challenges, because it helps you to build that resilience, and that resilience you use in other times. And as you've been able to do so well, obviously you get to even tell that story and paint that
Mhm.
picture for people to realize that they can get through that. And this doesn't have to be the end all be all. It's like, as you said so well, it's not how you start, it's definitely how you finish. So absolutely love that. And I want to ask you now my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And we're hoping to have different quote unquote CEOs on the show. So, Tamika, what does being a CEO mean to you?
For me, that's a great question. For me, being a CEO is me communing, because I am strong on my faith. It's just communing with the gifts and the abilities. I was one of those kids that could do a whole bunch of stuff. And it's just like, okay, why do I have all these skills? What am I going to do with that? And I'm just thankful that I'm able to create a foundation, create a hub, so to speak, for people that are like me, that don't have all the answers, but they know that they're called to do something, and being able to give them ideas like a spitfire round, and just like, hey, have you thought of this? And seeing their eyes light up. That's some of the joys that I get for doing this work and to help other people, to give them the confidence they may not have had before, to get out and, just like I say, not only be a dreamer but a doer. Um, I think it might have been Gary Vee that said that a lot of dreams are in the cemetery, and they shouldn't be. It's about our legacy at the end of the day. So that's something else that I put into perspective as a CEO.
Nice. I absolutely love that. And yeah, I think that I've heard a lot too. Like they said, the wealthiest place in the world is not the banks, it's not, these historical places, it's actually the graveyard because there's so many books, there's so many speeches, there's so many ideas, gifts. And if all
Mhm.
that didn't come to pass, it wasn't, implemented in the world. So I love that you, first of all, have, been able to kind of take those different skills and talents and abilities that you had and be able to kind of share those and such a powerful way, but also that you empower other people to do that as well too, so that we don't have
Yeah.
as affluent a graveyard as we could have, because you are helping those people to make sure that they are having the confidence and the ability to not just be dreamers but also doers as well too.
Absolutely. That's one of the important things when it comes to the core values of Wordsmith Enterprises is to just acknowledge their own gifts, their own scenic routes and abilities, and to carry it out in the world, and for them to think about their own legacy.
Absolutely. Well, Tamika, truly appreciate that definition and perspective. And of course, I appreciate your time even more. So, what I want to do
Thank
now is pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional that you can let our readers and listeners know. And of course, how best people can get a hold of you, find out about your books, and all the awesome things that you're working on.
Yeah, and thanks again for this opportunity to be on I Am CEO podcast. And for those who would like to follow me, I am at Tamieka Smith. That's Tamieka, last name Smith. You can also find me on my website, wordsmithenterprises.business. I'm on most social media platforms, so I'm not hard to find.
Absolutely. And we'll make it even easier. We'll have the links and information in the show notes so that everybody can get a hold of you. And Tamika, I don't know if I can ask this, but if somebody might be listening to this and they're going through any domestic violence situations, do you have any like places, resources, or things that you can mention to them that might be helpful?
Yes, and so much has changed as far as technology is concerned. There's the National Domestic Violence Hotline. I do just want to ensure that anybody that may be going through this, just to make sure that you at least use the incognito browser. Because when you're dealing with someone in that kind of situation, they can look at your history. I've been through it too, just to make sure your safety, especially when you leave that kind of situation, because the first 72 hours after leaving can be very dangerous for an individual. Looking at resources in your local areas, there's plenty of resources that are out there. You just have to reach out. And the first one for anyone that may be in the United States is the National Domestic Violence Hotline.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tamika. I appreciate you sharing that. We're going to have that information as well in the show notes. But again, I think it's super powerful. I appreciate you so much for being a change agent. I think, again, when you tell your story, again, it probably provides so much therapy and release for you, but it also provides people, opportunity to realize that this can happen. I can get out of this situation. I can, share my gift. I can use words to be a speaker or create my book or whatever it is. So thank you so much for being that and being that change that you wish to see in the world, and empowering so many people to do that as well too.
It's a pleasure. I'm glad to be able to do that.